Richard says extremism is locking down the entire country for a non-existent virus. The virus did exist, Richard, but it wasn't as serious as some people thought it was. And coercing people to get jabbed to keep their job. I've talked before about how I agree with Richard actually on this, and vaccine mandates were an absolute disgrace. Leslie says freedom of speech is at risk. Labour's gender and LGBT policy outlined by Angela Eagle plus their structural racism policy is an example of what is coming down the line and will be classified as extremist, says Leslie. Well, what is far right? What is that extremism definition? Does this extremism definition actually work? That's something I think Tony in Bristol wants to talk about. Tony, thank you for the call. 0344 499 1000 is the number that Tony's rung. What do you make of what Michael Gove has said this week, Tony?
Well, I think this is a sort of sticking plaster, it seems to me, to try to cover up the fact that the government is so extremist. I mean, they're supporting genocide, number one.
Why are they supporting genocide, Tony?
Well, what we're doing is we're supporting the Israeli government and what's going on over there.
It's not genocide.
Call it genocide.
It's not genocide.
Many people do. We have marches here every Saturday saying they do.
Doesn't mean they're right.
Here in Bristol, no. Well, we have different opinions on that one, but the most important.
Well, you're factually wrong. So yeah. Anyway, listen. What do you think far right is, Tony?
Well, the far right. All you need to look at is the attacks the far right have done. I mean, let's go through just a few. There was Anders Breivik over in Norway. He was a guy that massacred with a gun loads of young kids from the left-wing party in Norway on an island over there. Then there was James Mayer, who killed Joe Cox. And one of the most recent and most horrific ones was the Christchurch Mosque massacre over in New Zealand with the guy Brenton Tarrant. Now, these people are Nazis and neo-Nazis. They're racist, and they're often they very much hate Islam. Now, in a similar sort of way that the Nazis hated the Jews in World War II. So you can see, I think, that's the pattern. And here in Bristol, we've got a professor, Dr. David Miller, who was teaching sociology at the university, and he was sacked about 18 months ago. So he took the university to the employment...
Why was he sacked? Just tell us a bit about that. I don't know about this case, Tony, but tell me what...
Well, I think it'd be great if you have him on one week, because he's incredibly good. He's much better than me on all this stuff to do with the far right particularly. But he was sacked for alleged anti-Semitism. What he'd done is he said that the Israeli state was involved in funding the groups at his university that were campaigning against him. And he was proved to be correct by the employment tribunal. He's just waiting at the moment for a big payout. But for being sacked. So that was about a month ago. Yeah, he was exonerated by the employment tribunal. So,
okay, I'm sure you're right, Tony. I'm just making clear that I don't know about that case, so I'm taking what you're saying as at face value. He's done books on the far right. Okay.
And he's extremely good at all this stuff. So what I'm saying is they're Nazis and they're neo-Nazis, and that's what we need to just, I think get it across it clear that there is this racism and it's quite organised. So they've got two kind of main aspect to them. One is the philosophical side, which is the ideology. These days it's called accelerationism, that the idea is to accelerate crises. And of course we've seen with the migrants, the climate, Ukraine, Gaza, COVID, these crises have been accelerating, haven't they? So they're obviously...
Well, they're definitely crises. I mean, a lot of what you're talking about are crises, and there are things that we should be talking about.
Yeah, right. And the accelerationists are trying to encourage these crises for one reason, and that is to come up with a solution that makes things even worse. But the really interesting thing about the far right, I think, is their kind of operational arm, where they try and foster these lone wolves that are actually being encouraged by others as well. And that's the Order of the Nine Angles. Now, the Order of the Nine Angles is apparently based in Britain, and yet Gove has still not banned it. They've been involved in encouraging terrorist attacks around the world.
Okay, I just don't know about that, Tony. But listen, thanks for your thought. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's just not an area I've just never heard of that organisation before. So thank you very much indeed, Tony, for that. And that is a big question. And what should far right actually be? And is far right used too liberally and, well, somewhat ironically, in terms of what people are saying? Has been critical of Matthew Staddle. I'm not going to read out any more of those. Vic says, destroy a system from within. That's what's happening now in Britain. Idiots support them. Leslie says, if I went to my child's school to challenge them on their gender guidance teaching, would I be classed as an extremist for my views? Well, Leslie, I certainly hope not. I hope that wouldn't be the case, because, of course, we have to have freedom of speech in this country. And that is, in fairness, part of what the extremism definition talks about a little bit. Elizabeth is in Aberdeen. She's given me a call on 0344 499 1000. Elizabeth, I think you have a question for me about this general issue. Is that right? You're very welcome to the programme this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I was just wondering what it is that you know so emphatically that 15 ICJ judges do not know when it comes to genocide, because you sort of cut Tony off an hour or so ago, cut him off at the knees when he brought it up, telling him that there is no genocide happening there. How do you know that, Peter?
Well, the definition of genocide is, and I knew your call was coming, so I just Googled it just in the break beforehand, is the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. A campaign of genocide. That is not what Israel is doing.
Oh, you don't think so? Well,
No.
A lot of us think that is what they're doing. And I don't know how you can be in disagreement with all these judges who
because I think they're wrong, and also they're judges.
Because you think they're wrong. You don't know they're wrong.
Well, I do, because Elizabeth, there are many. There are not. Well, okay. Well, let me explain why, and then perhaps you can give me your opinion. There are judges on the International Criminal Court who are from countries that have unbelievably terrible human rights records, like Russia and China, for example, and I'm free in a democracy to disagree with their decision, necessarily. I don't think it's democracy. I don't think it's what they are putting forward within their view is actually genocide. And also they haven't said that, their judgment is saying there is a risk of genocide. They're not saying that there actually has been genocide in Israel.
Plausible genocide is the wording they use.
Okay.
And like these other countries that do not have a great record on human rights really don't have anything to do with it. That's really, what about those, and it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I don't really understand your point. I mean,
I do not disagree that some of the judges are coming from countries that don't have a great record themselves, but they're sitting on a panel and they were given the task to do this, and it's as close as you can get to genocide, and the fact that you can't see that is really disappointing. Just one more comment, if I may.
Sure.
The fact that you didn't know, that your research hasn't gone far enough to know about David Miller, that amazes me.
Okay, I can't know every single thing that a caller or texter brings up. There are literally hundreds of different issues that people make points on, Elizabeth, over the course of a 3-hour programme. And I mean, that person made that point, and certainly I've read into it now in the breaks and so on. But if someone just threw something at me on the air, I can't know every single news story. It's impossible.
It's not about knowing every single news story. That's a pretty big one, Peter. But anyway, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
No, not at all. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for your call. That was Elizabeth in Aberdeen. And thank you to Adam, who's been in touch on text, who says, even when MPs work hard, they just work harder to make this country worse. I don't want an MP working harder to slap more green taxes on us. That is what Adam's view on that is. We're going to talk about prisons next.